All right, welcome to today's webinar, How to Make Your Website Beautiful. This is part of our free webinar series. We usually do one webinar a month. And please make sure that you're on our email list to make sure you get notifications of these webinars. So let's go ahead and get started. By the way, we're going to go for about 30 minutes, and then at the end of the webinar, we will have a chance for live Q&A. So as you know, our mission at 5 More Talents is to help you cultivate healthy growth for God's glory and the common good. And I'm going to go through an introduction very briefly of how we do that. Our focus today is going to be on creating beautiful websites. We basically have a 4-step process that we're going to go through and then conclude with some next steps. First of all, as we get started, just a little bit more about 5 More Talents and what we do. So we, of course, build websites, as you see here, under website development. We also provide ongoing website care. And then, in addition, we provide training, equipping, and consulting. And for those of you who might be just joining this webinar, thank you for coming today. We're going to go through about 30 minutes of a presentation, which will have some slides as well as some live demos. And then at the end, there'll be about 10 or 15 minutes for questions and answers. So thank you for coming today. My name is Daniel Voss, by the way. I'm project manager with 5 More Talents. Now, how do we do this? How do we approach building websites, supporting them? Well, we always try to pay attention not only to the technology, but also to the processes, but also to remember above all that really we're people trying to communicate with other people. So we always want to keep that in mind. All right, so let's get into today's topic, how to make your website beautiful. So in preparing for today's webinar, I surveyed our team. We have a growing team of 5+ people. Some of you may have interacted with them, Andrew, Bobby, Megan, Reed. I surveyed them and asked them to kind of look at the sites that we've built and what are some examples of the most beautiful websites. So I thought we would start off by looking at those just to kind of get our bearings as to what are some websites that really look beautiful. And I don't know why that each of you have chosen to join this webinar today or perhaps watching the recording, but I'm guessing that at least for some of you, it's maybe a sense that maybe your website is not as beautiful or attractive as it could be, and you want to do what you can to improve that. So I'm going to load some of these examples. Again, these were websites that, as I asked our other team members about this, these were ones that they mentioned. They'll finish loading here in just a moment, and then we'll take a quick look at each of them. All right, so one of the ones that that people mentioned was this website for Garst Mill Presbyterian Church. And multiple people said they thought this was one of the most beautiful websites that we've built. Another one that came up was Grace Orthodox Presbyterian Church in Elburn, Illinois. I'll just kind of scroll down a little bit on this one so you can see more of it. And I hope as we do this that you'll agree that these are beautiful websites. Let's see what the next one is. That one is still loading. Another one that came up, we do, you may or may not know that we also do projects for businesses. And so this is an example of a business project that we've done. This is for Great Lakes Metal Fabrication. So you can see this is a very beautiful site. Another one that came up was the Carolina Study Center. This is a kind of a nonprofit organization. And then this one was just to show that you don't have to be a you really any kind of organization can really still aspire after a beautiful website. So this is a company that builds basically digs out fields to lay out septic systems, but this was mentioned by our team as one of the most beautiful websites that we've built. So so there's the examples: Garst Mill, Grace Elburn, Motivation Septic Services, Carolina Study Center, and Great Lakes Metal Fabrication. Hope that at least kind of establishes some sort of common ground of, yeah, these are some beautiful websites. So what we want to focus on today is, what are the ingredients in that? How do we make our websites beautiful? And you may have a church website or some other type of website. We're going to focus primarily on church websites today, but this is something that through the ages, through the millennia, people have kind of struggled to articulate what are the elements of beauty. But here are 5 that make sense to me, and I think make sense with those examples we were looking at: is contrast, balance, emphasis, variety, and unity. So I think in each of those examples we could see good contrast. So there wasn't all the text was readable. There wasn't anything that was unreadable. Balance, you could see how each of those, you could see grids being used. You could see maybe a balance between sections that had a dark background and sections that had a light background. Emphasis, in those examples we looked at, you could see how there were headlines that caught people's attention, and then there are things that people could read but maybe weren't as important, and so they were smaller. And then each of these examples we looked at had variety in it, but also unity. So there's plenty of other criteria or elements of beautiful design, but these are 5 that we can sort of keep in mind today. So the first step in making your website beautiful is to choose a beautiful design template. So for example, with church websites, it's interesting, the 2 church websites that we looked at just a moment ago both make use of one of our church website design templates, Flavel. So there's 5 of them that we offer to churches. So if you're here today or watching this recording and wanting to make your website more beautiful, maybe the first step is that you need to upgrade to one of these design templates. Maybe you are a nonprofit organization or a business, and in those cases as well, like the Motivation Septic Services, they used a template like one of these, and that's a very important starting point. You can see just in these examples, there's a number of those principles being used. There's contrast, right? Small farms, big ideas. You can read that text. There's some variety that you can see. There's a unity where you can see the same fonts being used for the headings, and so on and so forth. So a lot of times the missing piece is simply that you need a better design template, a more beautiful design template that has those characteristics. And kind of we have sprinkled out today just some quotes that I found to be helpful. Thomas Aquinas, I think, has a helpful criteria for beauty as well: integrity, proportion or harmony, and clarity. So again, these are just kind of things to keep in mind. So the next step is to create a beautiful logo. So for example, in the case of actually many of those examples we looked at, Great Lakes Metal Fabrication, Motivation Septic Services, Grace Alburn, those three all had a beautiful logo. The other two were just using text for the logo, but in those cases, the text was in harmony with the rest of the design. Oftentimes what is done to create a beautiful logo is to go through all kinds of different variations. For example, in the case of this Great Lakes logo, we worked with them to produce dozens and dozens of possibilities based off of what they were looking for. And then eventually we settled on this logo that you see at the top. And even so, there's still ways that that logo can be misused. As you can see, this is an excerpt from their style guide. You can see that even when you have a beautiful logo, there's still ways in which if you mix and match the elements, you can still mess it up. So it's important to go through the process of creating a beautiful logo, but also to use it properly in the context of a design. Oftentimes when we're working with a church, the way this looks is they will have something that maybe they've been using, a logo that they've been using maybe on a bulletin or something like that. And it's actually a perfectly good logo, has a good visual identity to it. But oftentimes we don't have a high quality image of it. So when we receive the image from the client, and it's kind of grainy, it's low contrast, it looks kind of faded. And so what we'll do is we'll do what's called a logo refresh for them to make sure that it's crisp, it's high contrast, and it follows all of these principles of beauty and good design. So again, we'll have some time at the end of this webinar today for questions and answers. So let's move on to step 3. So I hope you noticed in each of those examples that we looked at the beginning of this webinar that each of those sites made a very extensive use of images. And in fact, let's go back through them. And Garst Mill has this stunning photograph. This is actually has their church building in the background, and it's just a beautiful photograph. And I think that that's a large part of what makes this such a beautiful website. Similarly with Grace OPC, right? They have this beautiful sunrise photo. They also have, just as you scroll down, just a bunch of beautiful photos. Motivation Septic Services, it's a little bit different story, right? But even so, there's still some good principles of photography there. Carolina Study Center have some strong images being used. And then of course with Great Lakes Metal Fabrication, these are all photos that they provided, and the photos are a large part of the impact of the design. So it's very, very important to use beautiful images. Now, we're going to spend a little bit more time on this step because this is often a barrier for people when they're trying to make their websites beautiful, because they may have a beautiful template, they may have a beautiful logo as well, but there's various struggles to get beautiful images. So for example, where do you get them from? What if you don't have a photographer? What if all the images are kind of grainy images or old images or images that were taken with a smartphone and don't look very good? So here's a few tips. Here's first a couple of examples of where you can get photos from. So the first one I want to point out is a site called Unsplash. This is a repository of free photos that everyone should know about. So, for example, if you're looking for photos of trees, they have tons of a plethora of beautiful photos of trees that you can download and use for free, that you can add to your website for free. The main thing they ask for is that you provide an attribution of, I'm going to show an example of that, an attribution of where the website, sorry, where the photo came from. Let's see, where do you get that? When you download, yeah, there it is. They say, they request that you give an acknowledgement of where you got it from. But you can make that unobtrusive and still still make good use of these photos. All right, so Unsplash is a great resource with another one that can be helpful. For example, if you are trying to make homepage slides, you could use something like Canva, which has a number of wonderful templates that you can start from. Now, a word of caution on these, all the examples we looked at, they all, let me go back to Garst Mill as an example. None of them were using, one of these Canva templates. All of them were basically using images that were provided by the client, or images from Unsplash, or some combination of that. And then they have actual text that's being displayed over top of them. But there might be some cases in which you want to do something more customized or more like a flyer. And then in those cases, Canva is a very commonly used tool, which is free to get started with. And there's a lot of great things you can do even for free. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about using beautiful images and how this works. So one of the things to do is, here's the tips. So we're seeing a lot of beautiful home pages here, but keep in mind that you want to make your internal pages beautiful as well, not just the home pages. And so let's look at an example of this is one of our church website packages, kind of a preset template. And one of the ways that you can, fairly easy ways you can make the internal pages look beautiful is just by adding a featured image. So let me show you an example of that. And I'm going to kind of show you some of the pitfalls that need to be avoided and how to avoid them. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this page, and I'm going to basically add a featured image behind the what to expect header text. And for the church websites that we build, all of them have the same functionality that I'm going to show you to make it really easy for you to add a featured image. So I'm using the new WordPress block editor interface. And in that, I'm just going to click on the settings for the page. Then I'm going to set a featured image. So earlier I found a image of a kind of a tree on an island I thought was beautiful. And I'm going to set that as the featured image. And then I'm going to update the page. All right, so I purposefully did this to cause a problem. By the way, this image was from Unsplash, the website that I mentioned a few minutes ago. But as you can see, when I add it to this page, you can only see the top of the tree, which is kind of weird. So how do you solve this sort of thing? Well, when you're adding these featured images to internal pages, you need to pay attention to the resolution and the aspect ratio. Now, the resolution is just the number of pixels wide and the number of pixels tall. One of the next steps I'm going to share at the end of this is that that's something, if that's an unfamiliar concept to you, not to worry. What we can do is schedule a one-on-one Zoom session, and we can go through resolution and some of the fundamentals of how to work with images, because it can be surprisingly tricky. So in this particular WordPress theme that we're using, it actually provides some very specific requirements and guidance for the featured image. It says provide an image that is at least 1600 by 400. It will be cropped and resized. An image exactly this size is ideal. So the problem we ran into here is that this image is larger than the 1600 by 400. You can see here it's 5,616 by 3,744 pixels. So WordPress can work with that, but you're relying on WordPress to crop it, according to its built-in instructions, which may or may not result in a good image. So there's actually a tool built into WordPress where you can edit the image, and you can scale the image down. So you could go like this. We're trying to get it to 1600 by 400, and then you could, within this, of course, it's saying the selection is the wrong size there. So 1600 by 400. I think we'd have to go back. But then basically the idea is then you could crop it. So WordPress does have an image editing tool that will allow you to scale and crop the images. So I did that earlier and came up with this image, which is cropped to 1600 by 400. So I'm going to set that one as the featured image instead and update the page. And you'll see this example is not perfect, but you can see that it's better, right? Here you can sort of see the horizon. You can see the horizon, and you can see more of the tree. So it's a better crop of this image. And what we had to do was basically manually crop the image before adding it as the featured image. All right, so that's one of the tips for working with images to make your internal pages beautiful. It's definitely worth the effort, because a lot of times the first pages that people click on to get into your site are not the home page. So this might be the first page that people see in some cases. Other thing to consider here is social media sharing. So Facebook has a tool called the sharing debugger, which is just, not everyone knows about it, but it's a wonderful tool, and it can really make a big difference when you're sharing things on social media. So let's take a look at this page and see how it looks in the Facebook sharing debugger. So this will basically provide a preview of what it looks like. Let's see, that was from about an hour ago. I'm going to scrape it again and see what the latest version of it is. Okay, so that's what it's displaying. Now, in order to get that, there's actually one other thing I had to do, and that was to specify a specific image to be used for Facebook. I did that using this Yoast SEO plugin. And then the social tool. So what I did was I clicked on the Facebook image, and I actually select the, rather than the 1600 by 400 version of that featured image, I use the full size image, which is not displaying right now. Here it comes. All right, so I specified this one as the Facebook image and updated it. And we'll now view the page. It's still going to, you'll see it's still on the page when they actually view it on the site. It has that same crop that we did. And let's see what Facebook is seeing. We'll just make sure it's still showing this. So this is kind of that full size version of that image. I think maybe it updated it just then. All right, so there's just a few tips for extra things that can be done to ensure a kind of a beautiful experience all the way, you know, not only on the home page, but also on internal pages, making sure that you're respecting the resolution and aspect ratio requirements, making sure to consider how that page looks when it's shared on social media. All right, so let's move on to step 4. And then we'll have some time for questions and answers. So step 4 is to build beautiful page layouts. So there's a few different ways to do that. So one of the things is if you're using, for example, one of our church website templates, they have different predetermined page templates that you can use. So let me show you an example. So this ministries page is using, as it says, the child pages template. Again, this is whether or not you have this option is going to depend on what WordPress theme you're using. But all of the church website packages that we make available have this same kind of feature. So let's give it a moment to load, and let's look at page attributes. So you can see here under the page attributes, there's multiple templates. You can do blog, child pages, different kinds of events, galleries, photo galleries, different custom templates for displaying your sermon library, wide content. So let me just go back to the default template and show you what it looks like that way. Sometimes what you need to do to take your website to the next level is to just use one of these templates. So you can see here, this is this could be right now. It's just displaying this paragraph, and your inclination might be, if you didn't know about the templates, just to kind of add those other child pages as a list or something like that. But since this particular WordPress theme provides these additional templates, you can just use one of those. So I'll switch back to the child pages template. And again, that's just one example of a number of different preset templates which are available. All right, let's see, child pages. All right, child pages template, we'll click update. All right, so now you can see using the child pages template, it displays all of the child pages and then has a nice featured image for each one of them. And you can click on that to view that child page. All right, so another thing that you can do as far as building beautiful page layouts is to take advantage of the new WordPress block editor. The block editor makes it much easier to build beautiful page layouts. So, for example, I'll edit this page, and I particularly want to show you a new feature of the block editor called block patterns, which is you'll see it already. There's a lot you can do with it. It's very helpful, and also it is. I'm expecting it will get better and better in upcoming releases of WordPress later this year. So first of all, in the block editor, you just click on this plus sign, and it'll show you a number of different blocks that you can work with. If you attended our block editor webinar, I guess it was a month or two ago, this provided a lot more detail on this, but you can see there's all kinds of different blocks that are available. One of my favorites is the photo gallery. It's very powerful. There's columns that you can insert. Another one that's very useful are, let's see, is buttons. It's here somewhere. Anyway, there's lots of blocks. But what I wanted to show you was block patterns. And these block patterns are great time savers. So you can kind of look through these and see if one of these is close to what you're looking for as far as an element on your page. So there was one I saw here earlier. I really like this one. So you can just insert that, and now you can go through and change all the elements. So it's not about Don Quixote anymore, but about something that you would prefer, although that got stretched. That does not look good at all. So anyway, you have to work with it. But you could here change the text. All right, and you get the idea. But I'm going to undo all that. Okay, so those block patterns can be a huge time saver as far as implementing a beautiful page layout. All right, so those are the 4 steps. Just to kind of recap, choose a beautiful design template. Step 2, create a beautiful logo. Step 3, use beautiful images. Step 4, build beautiful page layouts. So as far as next steps, which you might want to consider, if you have a church website and it's using an older template or a different template, and you like some of the examples you saw today, then you might consider our church web upgrade service. Or perhaps you're happy with your template, but you realize that that maybe you're missing a logo or you need a new logo. So as far as the logo service that we provide, we have two different aspects of that. One is a custom logo design, and that's where we kind of go back to the drawing board and we give you a questionnaire and you answer some questions about what you're looking for. And then we kind of walk you through a process. We usually produce at least 3 initial concepts and then take those through 2 rounds of revisions to come up with the final logo. Or we can do a logo refresh service, and that's where if you already have something that you're using, maybe it's something that is being used on a bulletin or a brochure, we can work with that and then refresh it so that it looks really good on your website. Another good next step for you might be to schedule a customized training session, just a one-on-one training session, or maybe get a group of people together from your church or organization. And a couple of topics I would suggest would be images, how to deal with images. There's a lot of details involved with getting good results from using images, and it's can customize that to your exact needs. Or maybe building page layouts. What are some ways that you could transform some of the pages on your website? So I just want to conclude before we get to the Q&A just with a quote that I hope conveys to me why this is important. It's from Herman Bavinck, the esteemed Dutch theologian. He said that beauty is the harmony that still shines through the chaos in the world. So making your website beautiful is an opportunity to convey that harmony, to embody that harmony, to reflect the harmony that that God created the world with. I mean, you can see that even in the creation account of Genesis 1. There was harmony, there was variety, there was unity. And taking the time to make your website beautiful, putting in the effort and the energy is a way to glorify God and to serve our neighbor. So it's really important. It's something that can give people hope, can touch their hearts, can connect with their emotions, and to really engage them and give and really ultimately connect people with your church, your organization, and to glorify God. Beauty is the harmony that still shines through the chaos in the world. That's why we should do this. That's why we should care about this. So with that, I will open it up for questions and answers. And for this part, I'm going to stop the recording.